For most of us, retiring will be one of the most consequential decisions we make in our lifetime. And choosing how and when to retire well comes with a lot of pressure to do things right and not make mistakes. To speak to that, in this video and the series of videos that will follow, we will be sharing our internal process at Peak Financial Planning that we call navigating the retirement risk zone, which is the exact financial planning process we use to help clients make better decisions, understand their financial health, and ultimately retire more confidently and comfortably. Now, these videos are not for the faint of heart. This first video is going to be an introductory video to the overall system and explain the 5 modules that we use at a very high level. We will be releasing a series of videos week by week, one at a time, that takes a deeper dive into each of the modules that we're going to touch on today. And hopefully the idea would be that along with the free resources we will provide in the email chain that these videos will be released in, now you'll also be able to watch these videos for free on YouTube, but if you want the actual accessories, the templates, the models, and access to the financial planning tool, you'll need to subscribe to the email list in order to get access to that. That you should be able to use this 6-video series to understand and potentially, if you wanted to, do your own financial planning process yourself. Now, we're speaking specifically to people in what we call the retirement risk zone, which is up here on the screen, which are individuals or couples who are within 10 years of retiring or 10 years in the first 10 years of their retirement. I'll try to do this first video in 10 minutes or less, and then the ensuing videos will be a bit longer with more substance and more detail, and again, more actionable. So let's lay the groundwork here. Now, we have a few videos already on our YouTube channel that you can watch that help you understand where you are in the retirement risk zone, why we call this the missing phase of retirement planning, and more detail about this chart on the screen, the retirement risk zone. But let's just kind of get into things. You're going to ask yourselves 4 questions as you enter the retirement risk zone. If I retire, am I going to run out of money while still alive? Are my investments suitable for my personal retirement circumstances? Is there anything I can do before retiring to increase how much I can spend in retirement? And then how do I manage this whole thing? The key point there at the end is you retire from a career not to pick up a second career as a retirement planner. Now, you could choose to do that. And again, these videos are constructed in such a way to kind of enable that, not exactly, but close. But the question arises, how do we actually manage the whole system? Now, at Peak Financial Planning, we believe there are separate categories to how we improve the probability of our retirement success, and these really set the framework for how we think through the 5 modules. On the left are things you can control, and on the right are things that are outside your control. You want to focus and spend the most time on the things that you can control, and then have plans and contingency plans in place for the things that are outside your control. You don't ignore them. You just have to understand you're going to have less influence over them. And if we misallocate how much effect things outside our control have over our retirement success, we will live in a perpetual state of anxiety. And so it's actually a lot better to just focus on the things you can control. And we're going to be going through those things in this presentation. Now, all of the things we talk about here are backed up by data, by a study done by the NBER, which is the Retirement Research Bureau. And it shows that through prudent decision-making, retirees can increase their retirement income by as much as 38%. And that is the basis for all of our 5 modules in this presentation. So what are the 5 modules? The first module, and we use a healthcare analogy for how we think about financial planning. If you go to the doctor and you have an ailment, the first thing a good doctor should do is take some kind of diagnostic tests and an assessment to find out what your baseline health is so that they can accurately diagnose whatever ailment you have. Now, they make a huge mistake if they have you walk in and they don't weigh and measure you and take your blood tests and take your blood pressure and understand your cholesterol. And instead, they skip all that and just go straight to giving you a set of prescription drugs to take. That is kind of how the medical model works. And that is also kind of how the financial system works these days, which is you go in for financial advice or you read things online and immediately you're told to do things without ever getting a real understanding of your current financial situation. So module 1 for us is assessing your current financial situation. With that assessment in place, you can now move to module 2, which is constructing the appropriate prescription. Once the prescription is constructed and tested, you can now move to module 3, which is implementing the prescription. And then once implemented, we move to module 4, which is setting up a feedback loop, which really just means setting up a system to track the results of our efforts. And then module 5 is managing the system long-term, bundling all together. Let's take a look at each module. In the first module, we perform the assessment. Most important part of it is to find what is called your required portfolio income. Retirement is all about cash flow. How much you want to spend in retirement determines everything. It determines what size of portfolio you need on the day you retire. It determines at what age you can retire successfully. It determines how your portfolio should be constructed, how much risk you need to take on, how conservative you can be. Everything is determined by cash flow, and required portfolio income is the standard formula we use to help someone determine how much income they need from their retirement portfolio on the day they retire. And this is what that looks like. You might have an annual spending amount of $75,000. When you're working, you're making more than that spending amount, and therefore you have some surplus that you save. But in retirement, you have what's called an income inversion, and now your income goes down because instead of making a salary, you're getting paid through a pension or through Social Security, or you're not taking either of those and you have a bridge years that you need to pass through. And what you need is instead what's called required portfolio income, which is the gap between your desired spending and the income you have once retired. That required portfolio income tells us everything we need to know about everything down the line of your financial plan. When we go through the next set of, in the more detailed module, we're going to show you the exact formula to calculate required portfolio income, how you back out how much portfolio size you need, how it influences your retirement target. But the main thing to understand here is that this is the most important part of the entire retirement planning or financial planning process. It is the sound foundation of the entire process. And the second thing to understand here is that no financial decision or opportunity is so important that if you took 5 weeks or so to build a plan and do the assessment and do all the steps we're telling you, that you will have missed the boat. In fact, it's the exact opposite. And what we want to do is through this lens, through this framework, help people shift from impulsive decision-making, which is fear-based and lack of understanding-based decision-making, to decisive decision-making, which is comprehension-based, where you understand things and make decisions through a lens of comprehension. Now we move to module 2. So you've done the assessment, you understand your required portfolio income, which we will now call RPI for the sake of brevity for the rest of the presentation. Now you can start to determine what are the prescriptive elements or the things that you can change to help improve your retirement situation. Improve your retirement situation translates to either having more money to spend each year in retirement or retiring earlier, right? Those are the two things that improve your financial situation. In a Monte Carlo, those would translate to a higher probability or a higher percent chance of succeeding. But in our words, it's cash flow based. It's having more money to spend in retirement, meaning more spending flexibility, or retiring earlier because you've got a sizable pool of assets and a substantial defensive plan. Again, our prescriptive items are broken into two categories. There's behavioral and investment. These kind of track roughly the same as up here when we looked at things you can control and things outside your control. The idea is behavioral things are things you can control, and those would be things like optimizing your retirement age, optimizing for income and expenses, optimizing for your plan's required rate of return, which is a concept you'll hear more about in the third video, module 2. Then there's the investment side of things, and there are certain investment-related activities that are in your direct control, like choosing an asset allocation, constructing the portfolio, and how frequently you rebalance, and how frequently you tax loss harvest or capital gain harvest, and all those different things. Ultimately, though, investment results will be mostly outside your control, and the behavioral elements that are around cash flow are entirely in your control. And so we want to help optimize for that. The objective being, again, like I said, to improve spending of flexibility in retirement or flexibility of your retirement age. We now move to module 3. Once you have that list of prescriptions or of action items, now we need to implement. The way we lead to implementation is we want to understand the trade-offs of all the different action items that are possible. So you might build an exhaustive list of 20 different action items, and the question you have to ask yourself is, which one do I do first? How much will it cost me? And can I actually successfully achieve everything I put on this 20-item list? We also want to have a system that holds us accountable and has us do what we say we will do. Because the most important thing here is that a retirement plan in a computer is like a video game. It means nothing if you see an increased probability of Monte Carlo success without the execution that carries out the underlying action items that produce that better probability. And then last but not least here, module 3 will also talk about how you create contingency plans for when things don't go the way you hope they will, which is really mostly about reducing anxiety because you have backup options. Now in module 4, we'll talk about behavioral versus investment-related tracking metrics. You need a system that tells you if you have your baseline, financial plan or your baseline assessment, like your original health history chart at a doctor, how do we track the improvement over time along the metrics that we actually care about? And you can see a couple things on the screen, but it's really going to be personalized individual to individual. But we want to create and construct our own method of tracking metrics that are important to the individual and move away from tracking what the media or random people out in the world tell us. We don't care what they care about. We care about what you care about. So we include things like tracking income and expenses, tracking withdrawal rates, and you can see the list on the screen here. We also have our own opinions about what we track as far as investment-related metrics, and we construct that in module 4. And then we move to module 5, which is managing the entire system. So it's how frequently do you track things? How frequently do you make changes? In what order do you make changes? How do you think about putting the whole system together and having a set of rules that allows you to make decisions in a constructive manner that is decisive, rather than impulsively spraying and praying and making changes anytime you feel anxious or have emotional responses to whatever's going on in the world. Last but not least, to kind of wrap this up, you've retired from work not to pick up a new career as a retirement planner. We've already talked about that. The idea here being, if you go about doing this on your own and don't do it with the guidance or something like this video series or a professional partner who's traveling alongside you, there's a very expensive learning curve. And that learning curve, the cost of that learning curve is that you will make mistakes with your own money, and you better hope that the mistakes you make with your own money cost you less money than you would have paid for a course or for a partnership with someone like Peak Financial Planning or anybody. This isn't a sales video. It's just the idea is you better be damn sure that the cost in the form of mistakes will be less than what you could pay for professional advice. So to wrap up here, we haven't mentioned other financial planning items that are probably important to you and will not go unaddressed, but we will also talk about estate planning and insurance planning and different things like that. The idea being that these are less time sensitive on the front end in most cases, not always, and that these will be an important part of financial planning, but are not usually the elements that determine when and whether you can retire successfully if that is on your upcoming horizon. So to wind things down here, if you're not already in the email queue and you want to get access to all the videos alongside all the tools that we're going to show, including Excel models and access to the financial planning tool, you can submit your email address through any of the forms on our website and you will automatically be added to this video series, the 6 video series. If you're watching this anywhere, like I said, just repeating, distributing these videos week by week. So it's a 6-week video series, so stay tuned. And if you like what you see and you have questions, you're more than welcome to put them in the comment section on the YouTube videos. If you're watching this via the email chain, just send us the comment by email. And last but not least, if you'd like to schedule a free consultation with our Be Only Fiduciary Financial Planning team, you can also do that from any of the pages on our website at www.thepeakfp. I hope you enjoy the videos. Thank you for your time, your attention, and your trust. We'll see you in the next video.